You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
What's something that your partners can expect with you? What's something that you expect from your partners? How do you prescribe, the ultimate marriage when it comes to joint venture partnerships in your business?
Oh, that's a great question about joint ventures, and there's a few layers to it, so I'll try to get into it. I'd say the first kind of the balancing act that always exists with joint venturing is, do you find the deal first or do you find the partner first? And I personally think that both of those things should happen in tangent, because if the perfect deal, as they say, often attracts money, but you still want to have an idea and a list and a collection of people who at least have put up their hand and said, hey, if a cool real estate deal comes up, I'd love to talk about it. So I would say that, if you're serious about building a real estate portfolio with joint ventures, just start talking to everybody you network with and, kind of measure their temperature. Are they interested in real estate? Are they interested in doing a deal? How much capital would they have? What kind of deals are they interested in doing? And just create a little database of who's interested in what. And then start, finding deals that match the criteria of yourself and the majority of the investors that you've talked to. So, for example, you've talked to 5 people who are interested in multifamilies, all under 2 million. They've all got a couple $100,000 to invest. They'd like something in an up and coming neighborhood in Edmonton. Okay, I've got 5 people. So I'm going to go out and find a building that's under 2 million, that's in an up and coming area that, doesn't require more capital than I have access to. And then it's all about getting that property tied up, and you're off to the races to find a joint venture partner. For me, one of the more important criteria for my joint venture partner is, number one, understanding what involvement they want in the property. If you're going to be the managing partner, it's really redundant to have people who claim to be cash partners actually wanting to have decision-making authority every week, every month, having a conversation about everything that happens, wanting an update every couple of days. It's all about setting good boundaries of, if it's a quarterly update, they get a quarterly update. If they want an annual report, you give them an annual report. But just making sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes and we can have a good working vibe. The other piece that I really want to make sure is in alignment is the exit strategy. For example, I don't want a partner who thinks that they want to sell and get their money back in 2 years if the project's going to take a minimum of 5 years. The reason 5 years is such a nice, neat number is because your average mortgage term is a 5-year term. So operating joint ventures on successive 5-year terms is just nice, easy math that lines up with how the banks operate. And again, you want joint venture partners that share your vision of how the property is going to go. For example, we have a property that's on a very large piece of land. It's a very small apartment building, and it's in a growth area that will be having a major infrastructure project happen in about 5 years. We're building a new metro line through that part of town. I say we, the city of Edmonton. I'm a citizen. I'll take it as a we. And so, we know that probably 10 years down the road, we've got a nice big piece of land with an older building on it that'll make very, very good sense to build maybe a low-rise tower with podium, or maybe a wood frame building or something neat. Who knows what? But the market will tell us in that time frame what makes sense to build on that. Well, if we have partners who want out in 5 years, having a 10 to 15-year vision of buy, hold, build equity, and redevelop isn't in alignment. So it's nice to have those conversations up front. So to kind of summarize the answer, number one, expectations on reporting, communication, and workflow, and number two, expectations on exit strategy is a really good place to start to see if there's a good fit for partners, because them having money and wanting to buy real estate isn't the only reason you should partner with somebody.
So, okay, so I'm going to follow up on that then. What are other reasons to partner? Because if it's not just money, what are other reasons? Why would you bring somebody in on a joint venture if it wasn't about the money?
That's a great question. So for me, when I do joint ventures, I always operate as a managing partner. So I want to make sure I'm partnering with people who have capital to invest. But on the flip side of the coin, if you have capital to invest, then you want somebody that fills gaps that you have. So, the typical ingredients that go into a good joint venture deal are, number one, there's, cash involved. Somebody's got to have equity. Number two, typically borrowing power. Usually the bank or some other lender is going to be party to the transaction, and they're going to have criteria upon which they lend. And so you need to make sure that the partnership, or at least a key part of that partnership, has the borrowing power to match those criteria. Someone to do the ongoing management of the property. So, at a very basic level, that's making sure that the place always has tenants who are paying rent and that the property's in a good state of repair. On a more complex transaction, maybe there's a renovation required at the onset of the project, or maybe there's some redevelopment associated with the project. So someone who can manage whatever stuff needs to happen. And the fourth ingredient is just the subject property, finding the deal and architecting who's going to be a part of what. Now, usually, there's one partner who brings cash, there's one partner who is management and deal acquisition, and then the borrowing power, I find, often can go either way. Sometimes it's one partner that brings it, sometimes both do it together. That one's usually a blend of what the prevailing lending rules of the day are and who the partners are in terms of their collective borrowing power.
Yeah, no, great explanation of, the equity, the financing, the management, and the actual property. Guys, if you haven't been able to pick up on this, James has done this plenty of times, and it makes it sound very simple in a nice, calm and soothing voice as well, too. So what are your future plans? Like, you've done this for, you said, almost, 15 years. You've acquired almost, you said 250 doors. You're continuing to find, great properties, great areas, partnering with people so they can go and expand their portfolios. What gets you up every day? What makes you motivated to kind of continue to do this? And where do you see as you move forward?
Going forward in the future, my plans kind of are existing on two parallel tracks. Track number one is, as a realtor with the real estate career, we really want to solidify our presence in Western Canada. And over the next 5 years, we want to have a functioning team office in all the major cities: Edmonton, Calgary, Kelowna, Vancouver, Victoria. If we have a nice solid foothold in each of those markets, it should solidify our place as one of the top real estate firms in Western Canada for, investors is a huge focus of ours, but also, regular people buying and selling their homes. So that's expansion track number one. On the portfolio side, on the real estate investor side, I kind of, a good analogy would be, in my portfolio is like a garden, and at this point, it's more about maintenance of that garden as opposed to trying to grow it bigger and bigger. So what things that I'll be doing is, number one, deleveraging. So it's very popular when you're starting out your portfolio to go higher leverage, make more acquisitions, maybe take a few risks for the sake of growth. At this point, I've got the amount of property that I want, so I'm trying to deleverage that property, more equity, less debt, and remove some of the underperforming properties from my portfolio, and only very selectively add ones that are like 11 out of 10 in terms of criteria, knowing that I've very selectively picked properties on pieces of land that will make sense to develop one day. So I don't want to have to go through another round of partnership and capital raising to find the funds to develop. By the time it makes sense to develop most of those properties, I'd like them to be either debt-free or close to debt-free, so that we can use the equity in the properties as the capital for developing them. So that's kind of the next round, is just letting the market grow the way that it needs to grow, and it will let us know when it's time to look at redeveloping some of these properties, because the opportunities are just going to make sense. So that's the two trajectories for the two main pillars of my career: is grow our real estate team, find great realtors in the major cities that want to be a part of our organization, that match our culture and that love helping people buy investment properties, and then take my portfolio and just let that deleverage itself, replace debt with equity, and then when the time is right, start looking at redeveloping some of these pieces of property that I have.
And it sounds to me like when you're talking about the deleveraging strategy and everything else that you talked about around going into joint ventures and all the rest of it, it doesn't really matter whether you're talking about a multifamily, like a large multifamily residence, right? Or 12 or 24 or whatever, 50 units, or single family homes. Because really, when push comes to shove, you are talking about the same thing. You can deleverage your single family holdings, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, the ones that I've definitely deleveraged the houses as well. So, every property, I call it a bit of an old school thinking because especially with interest rates being as inexpensive as they are, a lot of people are like, oh, the money's so cheap, borrow more of it. And, I'm thinking, oh, the money's so cheap, I can pay down the mortgages faster. So, I mean, it's definitely a different way of thinking, but I personally feel that the one of the safest places to be from a wealth creation perspective is to own top quality assets and top quality locations with no debt on them. And that's kind of what I'm pushing towards.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.